I used to think that running from things made me free. That if I kept moving, kept my head down, the worst parts of myself would stay behind like old towns in the rearview mirror. But truth doesn't work that way. Pain doesn't care about mileage. And guilt? Guilt rides shotgun. I was 27 and already tired, working under hoods at the shop all day, pretending I hadn't wasted 2 years in EMT school just to quit the first time a patient died in my hands. Jessica was still with me back then, though it was hard to say why. Maybe routine, maybe history. Maybe she was just as scared of starting over as I was. That October, we'd planned a trip. Something to reconnect. Nothing fancy. Just a drive through Arizona. A few nights camping under red rock cliffs, clear skies, and cheap coffee. I told her it'd be like old times. She smiled like she wanted to believe me. The tire didn't blow until we were nearly out of daylight. 1 second we were arguing, again about a missed turn. The next, the steering wheel jolted. The car lurched right, and we rolled to a dead stop in a patch of desert that looked like Mars. There was no reception, no traffic. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like the world forgot you existed. Jessica got out without a word, arms crossed, staring out into nothing. I didn't have a spare, just a jack, a half-empty tool bag, and a knot of frustration winding tighter in my chest. We waited. 40 minutes, maybe more, before an old pickup truck finally slowed beside us. The driver was in his 50s, face worn like sandpaper, quiet eyes under a faded John Deere cap. Said there was a motel about 10 miles back. Said he could tow us there. We didn't ask questions. We just said yes. The Sycamore Trail Motel sat off Route 63 like something left behind in another decade. Dusty stucco, flickering office sign. A playground choked in weeds. There were no other cars in the lot. Inside the office, a thin man with a crossword puzzle barely looked up before handing us a brass key. Room 6, no ID, no signature. Just a key and a nod. The room smelled like old smoke and older memories. One queen bed, faded carpet, a ticking ceiling fan, and a large wall mirror screwed in above the dresser. I couldn't tell if the AC was broken or just tired. It hummed low, but gave off more noise than relief. Jessica sat on the edge of the bed and said nothing. I pretended to dig through my backpack for chargers, just to avoid her eyes. "You always said you'd never bring me somewhere like this," she said. "I didn't plan this. You don't plan a lot of things lately." The silence after that was heavier than any fight. I wanted to explain, to say the right thing, but I had nothing. Just guilt, and the taste of things left unsaid. That night we barely spoke. I slept in my clothes, one hand under the pillow like I used to when I was on call for emergencies. Old habits. Around 2 a.m., I woke up freezing. The window was cracked open. I was sure I'd locked it. Jessica was curled away from me, her breathing shallow, almost too quiet. I got up to shut it and saw something strange in the mirror. Letters, just faint, like they'd been written in fog. 3 words. "Don't leave her." I blinked, wiped the glass. Nothing. I checked the hallway. No sound. No one. The office light was off. The truck was gone. Only the ticking fan, the hum of the fridge, and the growing sense that we were not alone. I woke with a knot in my stomach and the sense that something was missing. It took me a second to realize what it was. Jessica. Her side of the bed was cold. Her shoes were gone. Her bag too. At first I thought maybe she'd gone outside for air. We'd fought before, she'd done that sometimes, walk it off. But she always left a note, or at least slammed the door hard enough to make her point. The silence now felt surgical, clean, precise. I went to the front office. The place was empty. The crossword puzzle still sat on the counter half finished. The clock on the wall had stopped at 1:49. I knocked on every room, one by one. Room 3, room 5, room 8. Every single one was unlocked, beds made, bathrooms clean. No guests, no staff. No sign anyone had stayed here in weeks. I ran back to room 6. The mirror had changed. New words had appeared in that same foggy scrawl, just behind my reflection. She was never yours to save. I stepped back. My skin crawled like static. I checked under the bed, in the closet, the bathroom. Nothing. I pulled out my phone again. Still no signal. For a moment, I just stood there, heart pounding, breathing like I used to during my training rides, counting seconds between the inhale and the panic. I thought about the accident that ended it for me. My last shift in the ambulance. The boy with the punctured lung. 12 minutes too late. His mother screaming at me as we wheeled him in. Jessica holding my face that night, telling me it wasn't my fault. But it was. Just like now. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at that mirror for a long time, hoping it would change again, hoping it wouldn't. I packed what I could and drove the car until the wheel gave out. Not far, a few miles maybe, long enough for the motel to vanish behind me. I left it on the shoulder and started walking. Eventually, I flagged down a tow truck near a gas station. The driver asked if I needed help. I just said yes. By mid-afternoon, I reached a sheriff's station. I told them what happened, most of it anyway, that my girlfriend had disappeared from a roadside motel, that there was no one there, no records, no manager. They sent a deputy to investigate. When he came back, he looked confused. He said there was no Sycamore Trail motel off Route 63. Said there used to be one back in the late 80s, but it burned down after a domestic murder-suicide. A man and his wife and some other woman whose name was never released. Nobody ever rebuilt. Locals avoided the site. He offered to drive me out there. When we arrived, my legs locked up. There was no motel, just cracked foundation, rusted pipes poking through the weeds, a Coke machine half buried in dirt, a swing set twisted and broken, and a bent piece of brass in the dirt. A room key, room 6. They made me stay overnight at a hospital in Flagstaff. Routine observation, they said, just in case. The nurse asked if I was on anything, if I'd suffered trauma recently. I said no. I didn't know how to explain what I saw, what I felt. I tried calling Jessica's parents, her friends, her boss. No one had heard from her. She was gone, not missing. Gone. Like a phantom in the space where a person used to be. They let me go the next morning. I got a ride back to the shop where I worked, but everything felt distant, colorless, like I'd come back from someplace I wasn't supposed to survive. That night, I went home and turned on the mirror in our bedroom, not to look at myself, to see if anything would right itself in fog. Nothing. Just me, staring at a face I didn't recognize anymore. A year passed. People asked about Jessica. I gave the same answers. We split. She moved away. Long story. No one asked more than once. I kept working, fixed cars, paid bills, ate dinner alone. But every once in a while, I'd dream about that room. The ticking fan, the fridge, the cold air that wasn't quite natural, and her voice, soft, distant. You don't plan a lot of things lately. I visited the site once more. There was no motel, but the mirror from room 6 was still there, cracked and leaning against a tree. Someone had scrawled something new in the dust. You can't save the dead, but you can choose the living. Some places aren't meant to be revisited, and some people can't be pulled back from where they've gone. Guilt is a heavy thing, but it doesn't have to be forever. What matters is who you show up for now. Because in the end, the past isn't where you're supposed to live. It's just where you learn how to move forward. Some places stay quiet too long. The kind of quiet that feels like something's waiting for you to arrive. When I pulled into the Pine Lantern Motel, I wasn't looking for anything special. Just a cheap bed, hot water, and the kind of roadside nothingness that doesn't ask questions. It was week 2 of my healing road trip, a personal PR stunt that had started as a travel blog series and turned into a ghost town of half-written drafts and half-truths. After everything with the podcast drama, the partnership fallout, and my engagement going up in smoke, I just wanted to keep driving, keep moving west and away. Ashford, Nebraska wasn't on my itinerary, but after 6 straight hours of radio static and flat fields, I saw a billboard with the words, "We keep it quiet so you can rest easy," and figured that was enough of a sign. The Pine Lantern sat just off Route 27 like it had dozed off sometime in the late 70s. 2 rows of rooms shaped like a horseshoe, with faded yellow doors and chipped blue trim. The gravel in the lot cracked under my tires like brittle bones. I parked in front of the office and stepped into a room that smelled faintly of mothballs and pine cleaner. The woman at the desk, Miriam, according to her name tag, barely looked up from her crossword. "Room 9, she said. "Don't open the little door. Bathroom's to your left." "The what?" She pointed without lifting her eyes. "Small door in the corner. Sticks anyway." I waited for a smirk or some kind of joke, but she just slid the key toward me. Brass, old-fashioned, with a bent corner and the number etched in fading red. It felt cold even through my sleeve. I forced a smile. "Thanks." She didn't answer. Room 9 was at the far end of the row, one light bulb flickering in the overhang above it. Inside smelled like cedar and metal, like old blood on wood that had been sanded too many times. Nothing about it matched. The bedspread was plaid, the curtains were floral, the carpet was beige but worn to gray in the middle. A small CRT television sat on a dresser that leaned sideways, and in the far corner, just like she said, was a little door, no more than 3 feet tall, set low into the wall, with a rusted iron latch and paint that had cracked around the edges like it had been opened and slammed shut too many times. It was the kind of door that didn't belong in a motel room, the kind that had a purpose once, and then was forgotten. I texted Maya, made it to Ashford. Weird room, but cute in a rustic murdery way, lol. No reply. I flopped on the bed and opened my laptop, scrolling through half-written posts and sponsor drafts I hadn't touched in days. I pulled up the last one I started. 10 unforgettable stops between Chicago and the Rockies. I couldn't remember what number Ashford was supposed to be. Probably didn't matter. I kept glancing at that little door, and around 1:20 a.m. I heard the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. 3 soft, deliberate knocks just loud enough to slice through the silence. I froze, sitting up in bed with the blanket pulled around me like armor. My eyes tracked across the room. No shadows moved. No wind moaned through the windows. But the tapping came again, this time more patient, like someone wasn't in a hurry. It was coming from the little door. "Okay," I whispered to no one. "It's old pipes. Old buildings make noise." I got up and walked over, stopping just short of touching it. The latch was still closed. The paint around it was peeled, rust flaking near the base. Tap. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't angry. It was expectant. I reached out and touched the door with my fingertips. Cold. Not cold like outside air. Cold like stone under the earth. The kind of cold that didn't belong in drywall. I didn't open it. I pulled the desk chair in front of it instead. It was hollow reassurance, but it helped. Then I climbed back into bed, left the lights on, and stared at the ceiling for the rest of the night. In the morning, the tapping had stopped. So had my cell service. I stepped outside into the gray dawn and tried texting again. Nothing. I held the phone up toward the sky like that would help. Still no bars. Back in the office, the front desk was empty. Miriam's crossword puzzle was still there, half filled. A cold cup of coffee sat beside it, dust clinging to the rim like it had been there for days. I left the key on the counter and walked outside, a knot of unease growing in my throat. The trees along the lot were bare, even though it was mid-April. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of gravel under my boots as I got back in the car. When I pulled onto Route 27, I didn't look back until I checked the mirror. Room 9 was still there. So was the little door. Open, just a crack. I didn't stop driving until I hit a diner off the interstate that looked like it hadn't updated its menu since Reagan. I parked, ordered a black coffee, and used their payphone outside to call Maya. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Jesus, Lena, where the hell have you been?" I've been driving. What's wrong? I've been calling all night. Your number kept saying it was disconnected. Not out of range. Disconnected. That's not possible, I said. I had full signal until this morning. Maya hesitated. Where did you stay? Pine Lantern Motel, Ashford. She went silent for a beat. Lena, that place burned down, like years ago. Condemned. There's no staff, no working power. What are you talking about? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because right then, standing in a sunny parking lot with the scent of bacon and motor oil in the air, I felt it again, like someone was watching me, like someone was waiting. I didn't go home after that. I kept driving, through Colorado, Utah, parts of Nevada, where even Google Maps gave up. I stopped writing, canceled my blog. Every time I tried to sit down and edit photos, I saw that door, closed, open, halfway, waiting. I stopped checking mirrors. I started hearing taps in unfamiliar motels, always around the same time. 1:20 a.m., sometimes a knock, sometimes something scratching, like fingers on the inside of a box. I changed my phone number. Maya still found me once or twice. She begged me to come back, said we could figure it out, said maybe I had imagined it. But I knew what I saw. And worse, I knew it had followed me. It's been 7 months now. I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat in New Mexico. No internet, no mirrors, no television. I pay cash for everything. People think I'm running from something. They're right. I still wake up around 1:20 a.m. every night. There's no little door in this place, but sometimes I hear things, shifting in the walls, something waiting on the other side. I haven't spoken to Miriam since that night, haven't spoken to anyone really, but I've started writing again, not blog posts, letters, apologies. Sometimes when I'm brave, I whisper toward the wall and say, I'm sorry, I didn't open it. And sometimes I swear I hear the door answer, you didn't have to. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, but ignoring them doesn't make them go away. Fear doesn't live in shadows. It lives in the silence we carry. And if we run too long from the truth, eventually, it finds another way in. I've been running for 6 weeks. When I left Austin, all I had was a half-dead phone, a loaded debit card with maybe $130 left, and a name I pulled out of a podcast I listened to on the bus. Lena Dorsey. No car, no family I could trust, and no real plan. Just an ugly, aching need to be gone. I'd already tried staying with a friend in Tucson, but my ex showed up there 3 days later with some story about a missed misunderstanding and a bouquet of flowers. I didn't answer the door. I watched through the peephole as he waited outside for 4 hours, drinking a Gatorade and talking to himself. My friend cried when I left, said I was paranoid, said I should just talk to him. But she didn't know what I knew. Barstow wasn't on my radar, but it was on the Greyhound route and felt invisible enough. Dry desert wind, strip malls, dust-colored skies. I saw a Craigslist ad for a place called Bay View Motel, which was funny because there was no bay and definitely no view. The ad promised weekly rates, no ID required, and Wi-Fi strong enough for remote work. That last part was gold. I still had a freelance video editing gig from a client in Chicago that paid just enough to keep me afloat. I got off the bus just after midnight. The motel was a 1.5 mile walk down a cracked service road, lit by gas stations and the dull hum of neon signs buzzing over abandoned diners. My legs ached when I finally saw the crooked Bayview sign flickering in red over a single-story building painted the color of old cigarette smoke. Inside the front office was a man I'd later come to know too well. Wes, mid to late 40s, scruffy beard, teeth yellowed from too much coffee or tobacco or both. He had a slight southern accent and the kind of friendliness that felt too eager, like someone trying to get a tip they didn't deserve. You look tired, he said, tapping the counter. How long you looking to stay? Few nights, I said. Just need a place to catch up on work. No ID? Lost it on the bus? I lied. He didn't blink. Cash? I handed over $120. This cover 4 nights? He smiled too long before pulling out a room key. A real one. Not a plastic card, but an old brass key on a rubber tag labeled 8. "Quiet's good here," he said, "long as you don't bring trouble." I nodded, already walking. Room 8 was dark. It smelled like the ghosts of too many cleaning sprays, old deodorant, and years of dust. The carpet was frayed, the walls yellowed, the bathroom mirror cracked near the corner. But the Wi-Fi worked, and that meant I could keep working, keep hiding, keep earning just enough to keep going. The next morning, he knocked on my door. I froze. "Room okay?" he asked, voice muffled through the wood. I opened the door a crack and nodded. "You're quiet," he said. "Not like most of the folks who stay long." "Just here to work," I said. "Right," he smiled again, slow and crooked. "Well, let me know if you need anything." I should have left then. I should have trusted the knot forming in my gut. But survival has a way of dulling your instincts. When you've got nowhere to go, you start convincing yourself anywhere is better than back there. By the 5th night, I was eating instant ramen and rationing gas station granola bars. My checking account was down to $43, and my next payment from the Chicago client hadn't come through. I spent the day glued to my laptop, editing a real estate promo for some high-rise I'd never stepped foot in, trying not to think about what I'd do if my account hit zero. That evening, just as I closed my laptop, I heard another knock. I didn't answer at first. Then Wes spoke. "Ran a background on you, Lena." I opened the door just enough to see his face. Calm. Like he wasn't telling me something heavy. My heart dropped into my knees. "Don't worry," he said. "You're not in trouble. Just saw you're not who you said. Figured you had your reasons. I'll cover your next few nights. Just stay quiet. Don't invite trouble." I stared at him, unsure whether to run or say thank you. I just nodded. He walked away. After that, things changed. Every morning, there was a black coffee waiting on my porch. A few nights later, it was a plastic-wrapped turkey sandwich from the gas station deli. Then a charger when mine broke. A bag of groceries left outside my door with no note, just quietly placed. It felt generous. At first, but generosity doesn't come free. The morning after the groceries, I opened my door and nearly tripped on a paperback book, a used thriller. My name was written inside the cover in pen. I hadn't told Wes my name was Lena. It was on the motel form, sure. But this felt different. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how Wes said he liked quiet women, and how I never heard him leave those things, only found them after he'd already been there. By now, I'd memorized the way the fan hummed, the pipes groaned, the hallway creaked when someone passed, but I hadn't heard a thing. That scared me more than anything. On the 8th night, Wes entered my room. I'd been in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard the click. I stepped out fast, toothbrush still in hand. He was standing near the dresser, flipping through the same book that had been left on my doorstep. "Door was cracked," he said casually. "No, it wasn't," I said, heart hammering. "It was locked." He smiled. "Just wanted to make sure everything's good. You didn't come out today." I said nothing. My feet stayed planted. I watched his hands. "You ever think about staying longer?" he asked. "Could use help at the desk. Simple stuff. Answer the phone. Keep an eye on the guests. I'd pay cash." I shook my head. "Thanks, but I have work." He shrugged and walked out like nothing had happened. I locked the door and pushed the dresser in front of it. From then on, every time I left the room, I saw him. Leaning on the railing, pretending to smoke. Sitting behind the front desk with the TV muted and his eyes on the hallway. He'd always smile and ask, "Still good here?" I stopped answering. On the 10th night, I had an idea. I set my phone on video mode and placed it half hidden behind the TV, facing the door. Then I walked out to the vending machine by the ice room and waited exactly 4 minutes. When I came back, I replayed the clip. The door opened. Wes's hand came into frame. He didn't walk in fully, just stood halfway inside, breathing, watching, then left. I slept with a knife under my pillow after that. I spent most of the next day packing in silence, heart hammering in my ears. Every creak outside made me jump. I knew I couldn't stay. I also knew I couldn't afford to leave yet. At 3:15 a.m., with my backpack slung over my shoulder, I crept out of room 8. I left the key on the nightstand. The hallway was quiet, the air sticky and dry. I didn't look back at the office window even though I felt eyes on me. I walked. No streetlights, just headlights from the occasional semi barreling down the highway. My legs ached by the second mile, but I didn't stop. At a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town, I collapsed onto the curb and begged the clerk to let me rest in the corner of the store. He looked at me, eyes tired, but not unkind, then handed me a hoodie from behind the counter and a bottle of water. "Sit near the camera," he said. "Just rest. You good?" I nodded, tears in my eyes. By morning, my freelance payment cleared. I bought a bus ticket out of Barstow under another fake name. I never told anyone about Wes, not the police, not my sister, not my old roommate. I didn't think they'd believe me. No bruises, no evidence, just a girl with anxiety and a story that sounded like paranoia. But I still check the Bay View Motel listing sometimes. It's still there, still advertising quiet stays for traveling women and no ID required. Sometimes I wonder if someone else took that room after me. Sometimes I wonder if she made it out. I live in Reno now. Work is steady. I have a little apartment with a bolt lock and a dog that barks at everything. My real name is on my mailbox again, but I still sleep with a knife in the drawer beside my bed. And I never, ever leave the door cracked. Safety isn't always about locks and keys. It's about instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. And when kindness comes with a price you can't see, you might already be paying more than you think. Long before I ever worked the front desk at the Pine Creek Motor Lodge, I used to fix networks for people who wore suits too expensive for their own good. I was an IT manager, cubicles, coffee, clean shirts, stable. I had a wife, a little girl who called me Super Dad, and a decent condo in a safe suburb. I wasn't happy exactly, but I was predictable, and people mistake predictability for peace. Then the layoffs came. My marriage cracked wide open a few months later. She got the house, the car, most of the furniture, and almost full custody of our daughter. I got an old Civic, half a savings account, and a 2-bedroom apartment with paper-thin walls and roaches that moved in before I did. When my IT certifications expired and no one called back, I took what I could get. That's how I ended up at the Pine Creek Motor Lodge, off Route 2, about 20 minutes outside Spokane. $60 a night, or $50 if you paid cash. The kind of place where people went to hide or sleep off a binge. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, and quiet suited me. I didn't want noise. I wanted routine. I wanted peace, even if it was artificial. My shift was 3 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. I'd show up early, restock the lobby coffee, vacuum if it needed it, and print the day's reservations. Most guests didn't ask for much, just a room, a key, and a do not disturb sign. I didn't ask questions. That was sort of the unofficial rule at Pine Creek. You don't ask questions you don't want answers to. September 18th, 2022 started like any other. A slow, chilly evening. The trees were already starting to turn red and gold. There was a little wind in the air, the kind that hinted winter would be early that year. I remember thinking I'd finally caught a peaceful shift. No arguments in the parking lot, no weird guests, no one asking if we had hourly rates. Then, right around 4:20 p.m., the front door opened and a woman walked in. She looked like she'd been crying but didn't want anyone to know it. Her hoodie was too big, the sleeves pulled over her hands. No suitcase, no purse. Just a folded $50 bill and a quiet voice. "One night," she said. "Just tonight." I hesitated. We were supposed to take IDs, but something about her, the way she didn't make eye contact, the way she was hugging herself, made me nod. I didn't want to press. I gave her room 109, corner unit, private. out of view from most of the building. People usually liked it for the quiet. Some just didn't want to be seen. She took the key and left without another word. I stepped out for a smoke around 6:40. That little patch of sidewalk near the vending machine had become my ritual spot. Pine trees swayed overhead. Sunlight streaked gold between the branches. That's when I saw her. Emily, I'd later learn her name was, standing outside room 109. Not leaning, not pacing, just standing perfectly still. Her arms were crossed tightly across her chest. She stared straight ahead like she was waiting for someone to pull up, or maybe trying to decide if she wanted to run. She caught me looking, just a glance. Then she turned and slipped inside without a word. We get people like that sometimes, running from something, or someone. I didn't ask. About 2 hours later, a man came in. The lobby door jingled and I glanced up for my crossword. He was tall, broad-shouldered, smelled like gasoline and too much cologne. Truck driver type maybe, or something rougher. His boots were dusty and he walked with too much purpose for someone wandering in. He stepped up to the counter. "Emily here?" "Sorry," I said. "You got a room?" He didn't blink. She told me to meet her. I checked the monitor. Emily Shaw, room 109. Not sure she's accepting visitors. "She expecting me," he said, and his tone flattened. I put my hand under the desk, hit the manager alert buzzer. He didn't miss the motion. His eyes followed my hand, then darted toward the hallway. He didn't say another word, just smiled like he was amused and turned. But instead of walking out, he veered around the side of the building, right into the trees. Just like that, gone. I checked the outside cameras. Nothing. I watched the feed on loop. I never saw him arrive. At 9:10, something itched at the back of my mind. I couldn't sit still. So I called room 109. No answer. Walked down, knocked twice. Still nothing. But as I turned to leave, I heard it, just beneath the door. Barely a whisper. "He's still here." The officer at dispatch knew me. Anyway, "It's probably nothing, Jason," she said, but she sent a car. The cruiser rolled in at 9:37, 2 officers, both calm, polite. I told them what I heard. They nodded, took notes, walked down with me, knocked on 109. No answer. They used a master key. The room opened. Empty. I mean completely empty. Bed untouched, no luggage, no wrappers in the bin, not even a wrinkle on the pillow. The room key was sitting dead center on the dresser. She was gone, or had never been there. But that wasn't the part that shook me. The security footage, once I reviewed it, only made it worse. Emily entered the lobby at 4:21, walked toward her room at 4:25, and then nothing. No footage of her exiting, no door activity, nothing in the hallway cam. And the man? Never showed up on video at all. It was like both of them appeared and disappeared between frames. 2 weeks later, I was closing up. It was a quiet night. Light rain. The kind of night you wanted to wrap yourself in a blanket and disappear. Then I saw it. Taped to the front window was a yellow envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, Jason, written in all caps. Inside was a single Polaroid, a photo of room 109's window, and staring out of it, clear as day, was my face. I was inside the lobby that night. I never stood outside that room, but there I was, pale, blurred behind the glass, looking out like I'd been waiting there for hours. I kept the photo, still have it, in a box with other things I can't explain. That was the night I handed in my notice, not out of fear, not really, but because I realized something. Room 109 wasn't just a place where people came to disappear. It was a mirror. And something was staring back. I left Pine Creek and started fresh in Spokane. Found contract work. Nothing stable, but it kept me fed. Got partial custody of my daughter. I see her every other weekend. We watch cartoons together. She tells me I look tired. I never told her about the motel, about Emily, about room 109. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone or standing at the microwave waiting for the beep, I think about that whisper through the door. He's still here. And I wonder if it meant the man in the woods. Or me. Some people disappear because they're running from something. Others disappear because they've already given up on being found. But the scariest thing? Sometimes the place you're hiding from is yourself. It was January, which in Vermont means snow on top of more snow, salt-stained boots and heat that never quite reaches the bones. I'd been in bar for about 3 months, long enough for the locals to stop asking questions, and short enough that no one really knew me, which was how I wanted it. My name is Kayla Reed, I'm 28, and I was 7 months pregnant when I took the job. I used to work in childcare back in Albany, but things went bad. I don't like talking about the man I left. All I'll say is, not all bruises are visible. The Northway was a holdover from the 70s. Faded carpet, buzzing neon sign out front, and vending machines that only took exact change. I ran the overnight shift from a little office window protected by foggy plexiglass. Just me, a chair that squeaked, and a microwave that smelled like old popcorn. I didn't mind the loneliness. I needed the quiet, and the motel gave it to me mostly. Until that night. It was January 9th. Snow had been falling since dusk, soft and steady. Only 2 guests checked in, one older man who never made eye contact, and a couple passing through from New Hampshire. I brought a peanut butter sandwich and a thermos of peppermint tea, and I texted my cousin Melanie during the slower stretches. Sometime after 2 a.m., the front door opened. He didn't knock, didn't speak right away. Just stepped inside like he'd done it 100 times. Thin, pale, maybe in his 40s. He wore a thin gray jacket that didn't match the weather, and he wasn't wearing gloves. His hands looked raw, no suitcase, no car keys, just a paper bag in one hand and something off in his eyes, like he was watching something behind me. "You need a room?" I asked through the speaker. He smiled, too wide, too calm. "Nah. Just needed a little warmth, and maybe a snack." He pulled out a piece of jerky, chewed it slowly, and kept staring at me. The hairs on my arms lifted. "You always work alone?" he asked. I shifted in my seat. Just me and the cameras. He tilted his head like he didn't quite believe me. Then his eyes dropped to my stomach. "Far along, huh?" I didn't respond. "You look like a princess," he said. "One of those old ones, in the tower." I pressed the call button to Melanie under the desk. I wanted someone on the line, just in case. He stared a second longer and then asked quietly, "Do you remember me?" I froze. "What?" He didn't answer. Just walked back out into the snow. I locked the front door and kept Melanie on speaker. I told her what happened, trying to keep my voice even, but my hands were trembling. The man hadn't had a car. I was sure of it. I'd been watching the lot all night. "He's still out there," I whispered. "Call the police." "I don't want to draw attention," I said. "You know why." There was a pause. "Okay," she said. "Then I'll call them for you." I watched him through the side window, pacing in the snow like he was rehearsing something. He'd walk 3 steps toward room 105, stop, turn back toward the woods. Then again, and again. His feet carved loops in the snow. I went to check the back hallway near the staff bathroom, and when I returned, the front door was cracked open. I hadn't heard it. The man was gone. I didn't waste time. I called 911. The officers arrived fast, 2 cars, lights low. One talked to me while the other walked the lot with a flashlight. 10 minutes later, he returned with a strange look on his face. "We found fresh footprints from the woods to the parking lot," he said. "Car tracks, no tire marks, just one set of feet that stopped here. But none going back, no." He looked at me, dead serious. "Are you sure you saw someone?" I nodded. "He was right here. He spoke to me." They swept the property. Nothing. No ID, no trash, no bag. Just a cold trail and questions. The rest of the shift passed in this gray haze of adrenaline and dread. The snow kept falling, erasing footprints and tire tracks alike. When daylight finally broke through the pine trees, the motel lot was clean again, like the night had never happened. But it had. Melanie drove up 2 days later and brought me groceries. We sat in the office during my break while she sipped tea and asked if I'd sleep better staying with her for a while. I said I'd think about it. Then she asked something else. What room was he watching? I looked up. Room 105. Why? She blinked. That's where that missing girl stayed. Remember the article I sent you? I didn't. She pulled it up. A teenage girl had vanished from that room 6 years earlier. No signs of struggle, no prints, nothing but her backpack left on the bed and a smeared handprint on the window. I felt my stomach twist. I think, Melanie said, you saw someone who never left. It's been 3 months since the night he walked in. I still work here. I keep the door locked now. Keep the lights on all night. Keep a whistle and a can of pepper spray in my pocket even though I'm not sure either would help. The snow is starting to melt. The trees are bare again, and the sky has that washed out look that means spring is trying its best. I'm due in a few weeks. I haven't picked a name yet, but I have dreams now. The same one most nights. I'm standing in the parking lot barefoot, snow crunching under my feet. I can't move. He's standing by the tree line, not walking, not speaking, just watching. And I think he's waiting for someone else to disappear, or maybe, just maybe, he's waiting to be remembered. Some people leave behind more than stories. They leave unfinished echoes, reminders that silence doesn't always mean safety. And the past has a way of walking right up to your door when you least expect it. I used to work with people who saw things that weren't there. People who lived in spirals of fear, loops of doubt, with brains wired like faulty smoke detectors, always alert, always shrieking. I was a behavioral therapist, good at my job, calm in storms, until I became one of the people I used to treat. It's strange how quickly your life can tilt. One moment you're doing groceries, checking your phone, half listening to a podcast. Then you're on the ground, your face smashed into gravel, hands bruised, with a stranger's breath in your ear and a voice that smells like cheap whiskey whispering, "Don't fight." That night broke something in me. Not just fear. Fear can be processed. It was the after that hollowed me out. The silence. The way even kind faces started looking dangerous. I lost sleep, lost my job, nearly lost myself. So when my therapist suggested a month away from my old apartment and too close memories, I listened. I didn't want to go back to my parents. I wasn't ready for home or the version of myself that lived there. That's how I ended up at Elmside Traveler's Rest, a peeled paint roadside motel near Grand Junction. I told myself it would just be 30 days, a place to breathe, somewhere I could exist without expectations. I paid in cash, weekly, always when the older manager Neil was working. He was soft-spoken and non-intrusive, balding, wore sweaters even when it wasn't cold. His kindness wasn't performative, which I appreciated. He gave me room 7, near the office. I liked that. Being close to someone, even a stranger, felt safer. The first week I drank tea, did long walks, and fell asleep to YouTube rain videos. Nothing strange happened. But peace, I've learned, is often just the first layer of quiet. By the end of week 2, I noticed small things. The armchair near the window. Every time I returned from a walk, it had shifted. Not dramatically, maybe an inch. Once it was angled toward the mirror, once toward the window. At first I assumed I was misremembering, but by Thursday, I was taking photos before I left. Then my toothbrush was damp at 6 p.m. I hadn't brushed since noon, and my Roku app sent me a push alert. Bluetooth connected, Elmside TV. Even though I hadn't turned the TV on in days, I started locking my toiletries in my suitcase, slept with my pepper spray next to my phone. That weekend I found a mint on my nightstand, still wrapped, green striped. I remembered those mints. They were in a glass bowl in the front office, next to the old motel brochures. I hadn't taken one. I hadn't even been inside the office in 3 days. I confronted Neil on a Monday night. I didn't accuse, just laid it out. "Something's off in my room," I said. "My stuff's being moved." He looked confused, concerned even. "I haven't been in," he said, "not once. Someone left a mint on my nightstand." He rubbed the back of his neck. "That wouldn't be me." "Then who?" I asked. "Jacob," he said eventually. "Turnover. New hire. He's just helping with cleaning. He's quiet. Mostly does I'd never seen Jacob." I asked when he worked. Neil hesitated. "Afternoons. He covers when I'm out." Usually that evening I asked for a different room. Neil looked apologetic, said everything else was booked. It wasn't. That motel never had more than 4 cars in the lot. I started wedging a chair under the doorknob at night. I still woke up every hour. Week 4 was worse. It started with knocks, soft ones, 3 of them, coming from inside the bathroom. It was 3:11 a.m., cold, no heating. I hadn't used hot water in 2 days, but when I opened the bathroom door at dawn, the mirror was fogged. Just a faint circle wiped clean, like someone had stared into it for a long time. My stomach turned. I packed within 15 minutes, left without telling Neil, left the key under the front mat, drove straight to my sister's house near Montrose. Didn't even stop for gas until I was almost on empty. I didn't tell her everything, just said I needed to stay a while. 2 weeks later, she woke me up in the middle of the night. Her voice was tight. "Caitlin, did you give your room key to someone?" "No. There's a note on the porch." She handed me a slip of paper, torn from motel stationery, ballpoint pen, all caps block letters. "You were never alone, you just stopped looking. Room 7. There was no return address, no prints, just a faint, oily thumb smudge near the corner. I threw it away, burned it the next day just to be sure. I never went back to Elmside. I don't check their listings. I don't even drive through Grand Junction anymore. But sometimes I dream of that bathroom mirror, fogged over, that faint oval wiped clean, and I see my own reflection, blinking, slow, off somehow, like a stranger watching from the other side. Safety isn't always locked doors and bright lights. Sometimes true safety is knowing when to trust your instincts, especially when everything around you is whispering that you're wrong. Long before I ever set foot in Bluff, Utah, I was already unraveling. I'd spent the last 9 years as an ICU nurse, rotating hospitals, changing zip codes like outfits, chasing the high of feeling needed. That was the thing no one tells you about trauma care. When you're inside the chaos, there's no time to think. You function on adrenaline and instinct. You don't process. You patch, stabilize, move on. But 3 weeks before Bluff, I lost a patient I wasn't supposed to. A 19-year-old girl who came in after a motorcycle crash, conscious, stable, joking with me even. Her vitals tanked 2 hours into observation. Internal bleeding no one caught. By the time we realized, it was too late. I had done everything I could, I know that. But her mother's screaming still rings in my ears some nights. The look in her eyes, like I was the one who'd pulled the plug. I went quiet after that, not just at work, everywhere. I didn't return calls. I skipped meals. I cried once, in a hospital supply closet, holding a box of IV tubing. No idea why that moment broke me, but it did. So when I accepted a 2-week temp contract in Bluff, it was less about the job and more about escape. A rural hospital, no expectations, no familiar faces, somewhere to breathe. I booked Timberline Inn on a Tuesday night, last minute through a link buried deep on a booking site. Everything else was either full or $300 a night. Timberline was $78, breakfast included. It looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s, but I didn't care. I just wanted quiet. When I pulled into the gravel lot just off Route 191, the place looked as tired as I felt. 10 stucco-walled rooms wrapped in a U-shape. A faded green sign flickered overhead. Desert heat shimmered off the pavement. Inside the office, the air smelled like old paperbacks and burnt coffee. A man in a plaid shirt looked up from behind the front desk. He had gray hair slicked back and a stillness about him I didn't like. "Checking in?" he asked. I nodded, gave him my name. He didn't ask for ID, just handed me a key, an actual metal key, attached to a red plastic tag labeled Room 3. "No smoking," he said. "TV remote's already in the room." I muttered a thanks and turned to leave. As I reached for the door, I noticed the camera above the desk. It was bulky, outdated, the kind you see in old security setups. But it moved. Slowly. Tracking. I paused. "That camera, does it work?" He looked up. "Sometimes." No smile. No wink. Just that. Room 3 smelled like dust and pine-scented cleaner. The AC unit rattled when I turned it on, and the carpet felt tacky under my sneakers. But it was cool, quiet, and dark, enough to fall asleep without thinking. My first 2 days passed in a blur of long shifts and short nights. Bluff Medical was small, maybe 10 beds in the ER, but understaffed like every other hospital. I was constantly moving, constantly responding. I didn't mind it. I preferred it. At the end of each day, I stopped at the gas station across the street. Campbell's soup, trail mix, the occasional soda. I'd eat in bed, scroll through my phone in silence, and pass out with the TV on low volume. No texts, no calls, just how I liked it. By day 3, the routine had settled, but small things started to feel off. Little changes, like the towels. Every night they were folded differently, first stacked on the bathroom shelf, then hanging neatly over the bedpost, then placed at the foot of the bed. Always clean, always refolded. But the front desk had made a point that there'd be no daily cleaning unless requested. I hadn't requested anything. I also noticed the trash was emptied, even when I hadn't thrown anything out. Once I left the room unlocked by accident. Came back, nothing missing. But the lid on my travel mug had been set beside it. The bed looked slightly neater than I'd left it. I told myself it was just generous staff. Maybe they were old school. Maybe they prided themselves on unnoticed service. Still, I started double-checking the locks. The note appeared on the 4th night. I came back to room 3 after a double shift, shoes aching, head pounding. As I slipped my key into the lock, I noticed a small square of paper tucked halfway beneath the door. It was yellow, a sticky note, written in blue ink. "You looked sad last night. Just wanted to say you're not invisible." No name, no handwriting I recognized, just that. My stomach tightened. I stood frozen, scanning the parking lot. One car besides mine. No movement. I went inside and shut the door, locked it. Deadbolt, latch, chain. I checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. I told myself someone left it by mistake, maybe meant for someone else. But that handwriting, it looked neat, intentional, like someone had taken their time. Next morning, I went to the front desk. Harold was there again, stirring instant coffee. "Someone left a note under my door," I said. "You know if anyone's been around room 3? He blinked slowly. "No one stayed in rooms 1 or 2 all week. Quiet week. It didn't look like a prank." He smiled vaguely. "Probably just the wind." But it was tucked under the door. He sipped his coffee. Sometimes the wind carries funny things. That night, I pushed a rolled towel under the door and left the bathroom light on. Every sound made me jump. AC clicks, fridge hums, my own breath. At 2:43 a.m., I woke up with that paralyzing feeling, someone watching. The room was quiet, no shadows moving. But when I looked at the door, I saw it. Another sticky note, half visible under the towel I'd wedged. This one read, "I hope tomorrow's easier. I like the blue scrubs better on you." I wore the blue scrubs on day 2. That meant someone had been watching me for days. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat with the lights on and my back to the corner. Next morning, I packed my things. I told Harold I was leaving. "You sure?" he asked. "You've got 2 nights left." I'm sure. He hesitated, then added, "We're just being friendly here. You shouldn't scare off so easy." That word, we. I didn't respond, just turned and walked out. Back in Denver, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I Googled Timberline Inn, only 3 reviews on the listing. One stood out. Came here to heal after a divorce. Never told anyone my story, but someone left me notes every night like they knew everything I didn't say out loud. 5 stars. I stared at the screen for a long time. There was something seductive in the idea. Someone seeing you, understanding you. But it was also terrifying, because you never knew who they were, or what they wanted. I filed a report, but there was nothing to investigate. No proof, no crime, just a couple of anonymous notes in a dying town. I haven't taken another rural contract since. I still travel for work, but only in cities, places with cameras, crowds, and front desks that don't feel like they're keeping secrets. Every now and then, I still wonder about room 3, about Harold, about who left those notes. I wonder if it really was more than one person, or if we was just the part of him that couldn't keep pretending to be alone. When someone sees too much without your permission, it's not kindness. It's a boundary being crossed. Pay attention to the small signs. They're often warnings in disguise. Some people think the unraveling of a marriage happens with shouting and broken glass, but I've learned it's quieter than that. It's in the cold silences between dinner bites, the passive scroll of a phone screen during a conversation, the way you wake up one morning and realize you haven't touched your husband in 3 weeks, and the strangest part is, you didn't miss it until just now. That fall, I decided to fix it. Not with therapy or big speeches. Darren hated those. I suggested a short road trip, just the 2 of us. No schedules, no phones, no distractions. We packed light. I didn't even bring a laptop, which, for an elementary school teacher with a stack of parent emails waiting, was saying something. We were somewhere near Warsaw, Kentucky when we pulled off Highway 42 and found the Riverbend Motor Inn. It was a plain, square building sitting near the curve of the Ohio River. Outdated neon sign. Half-lit vacancy light buzzing against the fog. The clerk at the front desk barely looked up. Mid-60s, maybe older. Didn't smile. Just handed us the key to room 14 and said, "River fog rolls in early. Locks stick sometimes." Then he turned back to the old radio beside him like we hadn't spoken. The room was basic. 2 double beds, an old dresser, a TV the size of a microwave, and a mirror above the desk that looked older than both of us. The carpet squished slightly and the whole place smelled like damp curtains and bleach. I noticed the mirror right away. There was something off. Subtle, but wrong. When I stood in front of it to fix my hair, Darren was behind me, zipping up the suitcase. I could hear him, feel the air shift. But when I looked up, his reflection wasn't there. Just me. I turned around. There he was, plain as day. Back to me. Zipper still half open. "Hey," I said, my voice casual, testing. "You see anything weird about this mirror?" He looked up, smirked. "Yeah, it's got you in it." I laughed, thinly, but I kept staring. Something in my gut tensed. That first night was supposed to be a reset. We sat on the edge of one of the beds, eating vending machine trail mix, flipping channels, talking around the real stuff. But eventually, it came out. I asked about her, the woman from his office who liked every post he made, even the boring ones. The one whose name came up on his calendar twice, even after he swore their project ended. He didn't deny she existed. He just shrugged and said, "Aren't there? You're always seeing problems that..." And I said, "And you're always hiding the ones that are." He didn't reply, just stood up fast, grabbed his coat and muttered something about needing air. Said he'd walk down by the river. I let him go. An hour passed. I sat in the room, watching the TV flicker on static. I didn't realize how loud silence could feel until then. At some point, I looked toward the window. The curtains were half closed, but not enough. I saw a figure, Tall, still, definitely male, standing just outside, face shadowed behind the curtain. He wasn't knocking, wasn't moving, just watching. I jumped up and threw the door open. Nothing. The lot was empty except for our car and a covered Harley. No footprints, no footsteps fading into gravel, just mist curling around the edge of the building like fingers. When Darren returned, he didn't say a word. His shoes were muddy. His face was flushed like he'd run. "Where were you?" I asked. He stared at me, too long. Nowhere. He dropped his coat on the chair. I saw it then, barely noticeable, but there. A faint lipstick smear across the shoulder. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay on the bed and watched the mirror, half expecting it to flicker like the TV had, to correct itself and show him next to me. But still, only my reflection. I shifted, pulled the blanket up, stared harder. Maybe the glass was warped. Maybe the lighting was strange. But nothing changed. And then, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the phone rang. It startled me. An old landline ring, sharp and tinny. Darren didn't move. I picked it up. Static hummed, low and distorted. Then a voice broke through. A woman's voice, shaky, hoarse. "You're not the first to check in with him," she said, "but maybe you'll be the last." My breath caught. "Who is this?" I asked. But she was already gone, just the sound of the line clicking off. Nothing more. I sat in the dark with the phone pressed to my chest. My skin felt cold, not just from fear, from recognition, because the voice hadn't sounded unfamiliar. It had sounded like a version of me. At dawn, I didn't wait for him to wake up. I packed my things, slammed drawers louder than I needed to. When he stirred, I said nothing at first. Then I turned, held his gaze, and asked, "Do you want to tell me what that was last night?" His eyes were bloodshot. He looked older somehow. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie." The phone call, the lipstick, the woman who knew something. He didn't blink. "You always wanted to fix us," he said softly. "But I was never broken. I was just elsewhere." He said it like it was a confession, not an apology. We left before 9:30. No breakfast. No goodbye to the man at the front desk who never once came out from behind the radio. As we were loading the car, I realized I'd left my book on the nightstand. I told Darren to wait and ran back inside. The room was colder now, despite the sun. The carpet felt wetter beneath my shoes. I grabbed the book and glanced once more into the mirror. Habit, maybe. Or maybe some instinct. This time, Darren was there. Not next to me, but behind me, standing straight, staring into the mirror like it was a window. His expression wasn't angry, just empty. I turned around, but he was still outside, by the car, smoking. We were officially divorced 4 months later. The papers arrived on a Tuesday. I signed them over my lunch break in the school lounge between grading spelling quizzes and wiping crayon off a desk. We never fought about it, just separated like two threads slipping loose from a frayed sweater. I didn't tell anyone about the mirror, or the phone call, or the strange silence in that room that felt like something waiting to speak. But since then, every time I check into a motel, solo trips, work conferences, visits to my sister, I look in the mirror first. Not to fix my hair, not to admire myself. I just check for who's behind me. I know that sounds crazy, but there was something about that night I can't shake. Something about the way my reflection showed more truth than the man standing next to me ever did. Because sometimes, the thing that haunts you isn't what you didn't see. It's what you finally did. Too late. Sometimes the clearest reflection doesn't come from a mirror. It comes from the silence you've ignored, the lies you've rationalized, and the stranger you find standing behind you, wearing the face of someone you used to love. It's strange how someone can disappear from your life and still shape it from a distance. I was 15 when my dad left. No warning. No note on the counter. Just a voicemail saying he couldn't do it anymore, that he needed to get his head right. My mom didn't cry, at least not where I could see, but everything changed after. She worked more, she drank more, and I stopped believing anything anyone said. By 17, I didn't really talk to either of them. I spent most of my time in the art room at school, sketching things that didn't exist. I liked charcoal because it was messy, because it never let you pretend something was clean when it wasn't. So when my dad emailed me that spring, saying he wanted to spend a few days together during break, I was stunned. He said he'd booked us a place outside Asheville, said he missed me, that he wanted to start healing. My mom said no, flat out. But the truth is, I didn't ask for permission. I just waited until her shift started, then met him outside my school. He was already parked, blasting Stone Temple Pilots through half-working speakers in that beat-up Subaru he always loved. He looked older, grayer, but he grinned like he expected me to run to him. I didn't. We didn't say much on the drive. Just trees and road and 2 years of silence packed into a car. The motel was 20 minutes outside Asheville, Shady Pines. Not as sketchy as the name made it sound. It was surrounded by thick pines and birdsong, and the front office had a little wooden bear holding a welcome sign. We were in room 108, second from the end. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and something sweet I couldn't place. As we pulled into the lot, I noticed a gray Buick parked crooked in front of room 109. I wouldn't have thought anything of it except for the woman in the window. She was blonde, maybe late 40s, just watching, not smiling, not blinking, like she'd been waiting for us. The first night was awkward. Dad tried to joke around like we were a sitcom family who'd just been through a lot. He ordered pizza, made fun of the tiny TV, and told me how his new job let him work outdoors, said it was good for the soul. I barely touched my food. Around 10, he stepped out for a smoke. I watched from the window, just to avoid talking. That's when I saw her again. The woman from room 109. She was standing barefoot outside her door, wearing this long robe that touched the concrete. She didn't have a phone, no drink, no reason to be out there. Just standing still, like a statue in moonlight. Dad noticed her too. They locked eyes. Then he flicked his cigarette to the gravel, turned, and walked back in like nothing had happened. "Do you know her?" I asked. He poured himself some water. "She's probably just a little lonely." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. It wasn't dismissive. It was defensive. The next morning, I found a note under the door. Just a single line. "You're not as safe here as he wants you to think." I stared at it for 10 minutes before showing him. He read it once and immediately crumpled it up. Probably some nut. Don't feed into crazy. But who would even... He cut me off. "Drop it." That afternoon, I saw him near the vending machine. She was with him. He wasn't smiling, wasn't flirting. He looked like someone backed into a corner. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the note, about how specific it was. Not dramatic, not threatening, just certain. Sometime after midnight, I heard something. Not loud. Just a soft tap, tap, tap on the window near my bed. 3 times. I didn't move, just stayed still and listened. Then a voice, barely louder than a breath. He did it before. Don't let him do it again. I sat up like something electric hit me, yanked the curtain aside. No one was there. But when I opened the door, the night air rushed in, cold and clean. Pine needles scattered across the sidewalk like confetti. Her door, room 109, was slightly ajar, just enough to see light leaking out. I stepped back inside and locked the door. I didn't sleep after that, just waited for sunrise. At breakfast, I told him everything. The voice, the message. His coffee mug shattered when it hit the wall. He didn't say a word, just packed up in 10 minutes and told me to get in the car. I didn't ask where we were going. I just got in. We drove for a long time. He didn't play music this time, didn't speak for at least an hour. When I finally asked, she warning me, he gripped the wheel so tight I thought it might crack. She thinks she knows the story, he said, jaw clenched. What story? He looked over, eyes bloodshot. Couldn't. I was ashamed. Because I told her things. Stuff I should have told you, but you mean about you leaving? No, he said quietly. I mean what happened before that. With me. With your mom. His voice shook. She was staying there too. When I lived in Asheville, we talked a lot. About life, regret. She lost her son, suicide. He swallowed hard. I told her I thought I'd ruined you, that I didn't know how to come back from it. So she wrote the notes? He nodded slowly. She thought she was helping, but she said he did it before. He didn't answer, just kept driving. We got back to my mom's house just after noon. He didn't come in, just waited in the car while I grabbed my bag. When I got out, he rolled the window down. I never hurt you, he said. No matter what she thought, I was just lost. I nodded, but I wasn't sure I believed him. Not completely. After that, we didn't talk for a while. A few texts here and there, but nothing real. I tried to forget it. The notes, her voice. That door cracked open in the night. But even now, years later, when I stay in motels for school trips or weekend getaways, I always check the room next door before I sleep. Always. Because the danger isn't always in your room. Sometimes, it's the one right beside it. Watching, remembering, whispering things you never said out loud. Sometimes protection feels like a threat, especially when it comes wrapped in truth you aren't ready to face. And sometimes the people warning you aren't the dangerous ones. It's the secrets you think are buried that always find a way to surface. I've learned that grief doesn't arrive in clean lines. It shows up like fog, unexpected, slow, and hard to shake off. After my mother died, I did what I do best. I kept moving. Took more travel nurse contracts, worked 12-hour shifts, told people I was fine. When the funeral was over and the casseroles had gone cold, I left town with a duffel bag and no plan except one. Don't go to Albuquerque. My uncle lived there. He offered to host me, said I could use the guest room for as long as I needed. But the idea of another family dinner filled with forced smiles and polite silence made my skin itch. I took a detour south. Figured I'd rest one night and keep driving west. That's how I ended up at the Red Pines Inn, a roadside motel just off Highway 84 near Socorro, New Mexico. The sign buzzed like a dying light bulb. Faded red siding, chipped paint, a busted vending machine near the stairs. One lamp in the parking lot flickered like it was stuck between worlds. It was cheap, $29 a night, and room 12 was available. The woman at the front desk introduced herself as Ms. Geneva. She was in her 60s, with short gray hair, yellowing fingertips, and a voice like gravel. She handed me the key, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Don't open the window after midnight. Wind does weird things out here." I assumed she was half drunk. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for charm, just silence. Room 12 was upstairs, view of the highway, and a row of dead pine trees. I dropped my bag, sat on the bed, and stared at nothing for maybe an hour. That night, I had a dream, one I hadn't had in years. My mother stood in the hallway outside the room. She didn't move, just watched me. Her hair was wet, dripping down her face. Her head tilted too far, like her neck had forgotten how to hold itself up. She never blinked. I woke up sweating through my shirt. Grief, I thought. Just grief. The next morning, I saw footprints, bare ones. A trail of dried dirt tracked across the carpet, leading straight from the bathroom to the window. I checked the lock. It was twisted like someone had tried to force it, just slightly. But it wasn't broken. My shoes were clean. I hadn't walked through any dirt. Still, I didn't leave. I told myself I needed rest. told myself I liked the quiet. But there was something else. Something beneath my ribs humming. The room wasn't threatening exactly. It was like it was waiting. I extended my stay 2 more nights. That second night, I heard something. A soft voice, barely a whisper, coming through the air vent. It was a woman humming, or maybe speaking. I couldn't catch the words. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and held it up. The moment I did, the sound stopped. I played the recording back. Nothing. The next day, I found something behind the front desk while waiting for a new towel. Tucked behind the guest feedback clipboard was an old Polaroid. Water damaged, slightly curled at the edges. It showed a girl standing in front of room 12. Same curtains, same doormat, same cracked stucco on the wall. The girl looked like me, maybe 12 years old. I asked Ms. Geneva about the photo. Her expression didn't change. She leaned back in her chair, blew a slow breath of cigarette smoke, and said, "You stayed here before, didn't you?" I shook my head. "No, I don't think so." She stood, walked to the back office, and returned with a guest logbook. The leather binding was cracked, the pages stiff. She opened to March 2007. There, halfway down the page, was written, Nina F. Room 12. I was 9 in 2007. After the divorce, my mom and I drove to Texas to stay with her sister. That road trip was a blur. She never talked much during it, and I never asked. I stared at the name in the logbook. I couldn't remember the room, or the building, or the dream. But I didn't doubt it. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear, something deeper. Like a bruise you forgot about until someone pressed on it. That night, I didn't sleep. At 2:15 a.m., I sat upright in bed, staring at the window. The wind outside wasn't loud, but it moved in rhythms, like breath, and the vent began to hum again. Not music this time. My name. Nina. That final night, I dreamt of her again, my mother. But not in the hallway. She was inside the room, standing at the foot of the bed. Her voice was sharp, cracked like it hadn't been used in years. She whispered, "It wasn't just you who stayed here." I wanted to ask her what that meant, but I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. When I woke up, the mirror was fogged. Steam. Thick, like someone had taken a long, scalding shower. I hadn't touched the hot water, and my room key was sticking halfway out of the inside of the door. I left before sunrise, still wearing the shirt I'd slept in. Didn't brush my teeth. Didn't stop for gas until I hit the state line. I didn't talk about it for months. Then last week, on a slow shift at the hospital, I looked up Red Pines Inn online, just to see if it was still open. It was. One of the most recent reviews caught my eye, posted 2 weeks ago by a user named K Barlow 13. Room 12. Feels like you've been here before, even when you haven't. Sometimes grief buries more than memories. It buries places too. But the past has a way of waiting for you, right where you left it. This was supposed to fix us. Kyle and I had been drifting apart for months, our conversations reduced to check-ins, our silences filled with regret. The cross-country drive was my idea. Time to breathe, time to rebuild. But by the time we pulled off onto the Flagstaff bypass, the rain was relentless, and we were already brittle. Kyle's voice, rough and clipped, said, "Let's just stop." I didn't argue. I was too tired. The Hillgrove Lodge looked exactly like every tired roadside motel I'd tried to avoid. A shaky buzzing sign with a missing letter in Lodge. The lobby smelled like a mixture of lemon pledge and stale cigarettes. A woman behind the desk, Renee, gave a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. When she handed us the key to room 12, she added, "It's our nicest room, mirrors new, just got it redone." I didn't press her for details. We lugged our bags down the hall and into the room. Cold air hit us immediately. Thin floral sheets, that loud heater by the wall, and a massive mirror spanning the far wall above the bed, reflecting everything in cold precision. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the chill settle in my bones. Kyle made a half-hearted joke about free porn staging. I didn't laugh or look at him. We hadn't touched in 2 weeks. I tried to unpack my sketchbook and laptop, but I couldn't concentrate. My heart felt too loud in the quiet. The mirror seemed to watch me, enforcing the space between us. I lay down on my back, staring upward at that mirror. I could see our reflections. Kyle's profile turned away, shoulders slumped. My eyes were heavy. Neither of us said anything. The room hissed with tension until I drifted off, not knowing if I even wanted to sleep. At 1:30 a.m., I woke. My breath caught in my throat. A faint whisper drifted through the room. I sat up, freezing. Was that Kyle speaking? I held my breath. Nothing. Just the stale hush. The mirror caught the glow of the hallway light behind me, and I saw motion, a flicker. I swallowed. The room was untouched, but my insides felt raw. Morning light was harsh. I didn't want coffee, but went to the lobby anyway. Renee was stirring something behind the desk. She watched me walk in. "Sleep okay?" she asked. I nodded. She gave me a tilted smile. That mirror came from an old casino suite in Laughlin. Some say it's bad luck, but I think it adds character. The words made me shiver. The laugh in her voice sounded nervous. Back in the room, Kyle was watching the ceiling. I asked if he'd slept. He shrugged. We made breakfast in the cramped kitchenette and drove into downtown Flagstaff, pretending we were tourists. Conversation stumbled forward, then collapsed again when Kyle brought up some flirty texts I'd sent to a coworker. I told him about his old flame on Snapchat. Our voices rose. Hurt and guilt poured out in equal measure. He stomped out of the car toward a diner. I stayed behind, locked in the booth we rented, face pressed to my phone screen, looking at nothing. The motel room felt colder when I returned. Kyle was gone. I flipped the dead lamp on and stared at the mirror. That's when I saw her. My reflection sitting on the bed and another version standing at the edge of the mattress. My heart pounded. I turned around. No one there. I blinked. The mirror reflected only emptiness behind me. When Kyle returned, we held a tense silence. No apology, no explanations. I sniffed back tears. Later that night, Kyle sat on the edge of the bed and tried to bridge the space between us. He reached for my hand, voice soft. Are we even trying? I opened my mouth to answer when we heard it. 3 deliberate knocks, not from the door but echoing from the mirror. We froze. He asked, whispering, "Did you do that?" I shook my head upon the mirror. Nothing moved again, but the skin on my arms prickled as if something unseen pressed against me. Neither of us slept. Morning came with low light and lower hope. We moved among our bags in silence. Kyle stared at the mirror as if daring it to speak. I packed slowly, heart clenched. Renee appeared in the hall, frowning. "You two okay?" she asked too brightly. I managed a tight smile. As we turned in our key, she touched the mirror's glass and said softly, "Y'all didn't break anything, did you? People get weird in that room. Mirrors hold on to things." Her gaze lingered on me, unsettlingly sharp. I wanted to ask what she meant, but words stuck in my throat. Kyle got in the car without a look back. I wanted to yell, to ask if he felt it too, but I just climbed in and shut the door. We drove off into gray sky. Neither of us touched hands. We skirted around conversations around each other. We made it to the next small town and checked into a new motel. The front desk didn't have mirrors bigger than toothbrush mirrors. I entered the bathroom and froze. There, smeared in the glass above the sink, were 3 small fingerprints. Smudges of mystery, like someone, or something, had pressed their hand there after we walked out. I hadn't touched it. Neither had Kyle. Goosebumps raced down my spine. We drove on. Our relationship carried along, strained and fragile, but without mirrors large enough to reflect our mistakes. Over time, we stopped sleeping apart. We talked again, real talks. But every so often I'd see my reflection in windows or rearview mirrors and catch that momentary flicker of someone else standing just behind me. More inward than ghost, that feeling rooted in regret and distance. Mirrors don't just reflect what's around us, they expose what's within. Reckoning with ourselves and those closest to us takes more than mere reflection. You have to confront what's mirrored back. I didn't plan on stopping in Utah. Actually, I didn't plan on stopping anywhere at all. When I left Colorado Springs, I just drove. No maps, no music. The silence was intentional. After the miscarriage and the split from Henry, my whole world had gone static. The house felt haunted and the people in it even more so. Everyone tried to tiptoe around me like I was made of glass. My mother called too often, my sister not at all. I got tired of nodding through conversations that left me hollow, so I packed a weekend bag, scribbled a note that said, "I'm okay," and left. Moab wasn't my destination. It was a flat tire and a storm warning. I'd been on the highway for hours, planning to sleep in my car somewhere south when the dashboard light came on and I pulled over to find the rear tire shredded like paper. The nearest shop answered the phone like I'd woken them up and told me they couldn't help until Monday. It was Friday night. That's how I ended up at the Silver Rock Motel, a fading building with a flickering sign and 5 visible rooms under a rust-colored rock wall. The place looked like it had been swallowed by time and spit back out. I crossed the cracked asphalt lot with my jacket zipped up to my chin, the wind biting like needles. Inside the office sat a man who looked like he hadn't moved in an hour. Balding, pale, his eyes were milky and slow, but he wasn't unkind. He told me his name was Don and handed me a brass key with a faded plastic tag. "Room 3, he said. "Don't lose it." "Corner unit by the laundry shed. $45. We don't do key cards." I paid cash. That night I lay on the stiff mattress with the heater knocking like someone trying to escape from inside the walls. The bedspread smelled faintly like cigarette smoke and bleach, and the only artwork was a crooked painting of wild horses galloping into nowhere. I tried to write in my journal, but the words came out mechanical and bitter. Healing was the word I'd used to justify the trip, but in that moment, all I felt was cold. Outside, the wind picked up, howling like a warning. I told myself I was safe, but I didn't sleep easy. The morning was quiet. I bundled up and walked across the highway to a little diner with red vinyl booths and bad coffee. The waitress gave me extra creamer without asking. I didn't speak to anyone else. I didn't want to. I left a $5 tip and walked back to the motel with the desert sun already warming the blacktop. That's when I saw him. A man leaned against the vending machine between rooms 4 and 5. Gray hoodie, hunched shoulders, and a bandaged right hand wrapped in thick gauze. He was staring off toward the canyon like he was trying to remember something. "You stuck here too?" he asked as I passed. "Flat tire," I said. He nodded once. His face was tired, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like someone who hadn't had a good night's sleep in a year. I didn't smile, just nodded politely and walked into my room. That evening I sat on the bed with a paper notebook, half-heartedly writing about the strange peace of empty places. At some point I dozed off with the lamp still on. I woke up around midnight to a soft tap, tap, tap on the window. Not loud, not frantic. Just 3 deliberate knocks. I held my breath. The room was still. I told myself it was the wind, but I didn't move. I stayed under the covers like a child. Heart pounding, listening to nothing. In the morning I checked the window. There were faint prints, smudges like someone had leaned their hand against the glass. I didn't say anything, just cleaned the glass with a towel and locked the window again. I convinced myself it didn't mean anything. The next day I saw him again. Same hoodie, same spot. This time I forced myself to ask, "You staying here long?" He tilted his head, then grinned like he hadn't smiled in a while. "Sleep with the light on. Long enough to notice you." That stopped me. I felt a flicker of something, discomfort or maybe danger. But before I could react, he held up his bandaged hand like an apology. "Sorry," he said. That was creepy. I joke when I'm nervous. I've been through some stuff. He introduced himself as Gavin, said he was traveling, used to be a musician, spent some time in Nashville, but it hadn't panned out. His sister died last year. His mom stopped calling. His last girlfriend ghosted him. He talked like someone who had lived too long with silence. I don't know why I stayed. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe it felt good to be seen by someone who also looked like a mess. We talked outside for almost an hour while the sun dipped behind the cliffs. He made me laugh once, and I hated that it felt like relief. That night, I heard the tapping again, this time louder. When I pulled back the curtain, he was there. Gavin, just standing. He didn't knock again. He didn't smile. He just looked through the window like he was waiting for me to do something. I stepped away, heart racing. I didn't open the door. I didn't sleep. By morning, I was exhausted. I went to the front office to ask Don if I could change rooms. He looked up slowly and squinted at me. Something wrong with 3? I'd feel safer somewhere else, I said. There's a guy, Gavin. He's making me uncomfortable. Don didn't act surprised. Yeah, Gavin's not always steady, he said. He comes and goes. Then why let him stay here? I asked. He shrugged. Because he pays in cash, same as you. I didn't have energy to argue. He gave me room 1. That night I shoved a chair under the doorknob and pulled the dresser in front of the window. I didn't undress. I didn't write in my journal. I just lay on the bed and listened to the wind scrape along the walls. At 2:17 a.m. I heard a whisper through the door. We're the same. You don't have to be afraid of me. I froze. The voice was right at the edge of the door, soft but deliberate. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I waited until the sky began to lighten, then packed my things before sunrise. By 6 a.m. I was walking down the highway to the auto shop. The sun was just starting to creep over the horizon, painting the cliffs gold. I knocked on the metal door until a bleary-eyed mechanic came out. I begged him to fix my tire. He looked me over, then nodded. Give me an hour. It took 3. I paid with the last of my cash. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw the motel in the rearview mirror. A dot beneath the rock wall fading in the morning haze. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, a Facebook message came through from someone named Evan G. No profile photo. No friends. Just a message that read, "You didn't say goodbye. You never really wanted healing. You wanted distance." I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked the profile and deleted the message. But I still think about him sometimes. About the way he looked when he said we were the same. Like he really believed it. Now, whenever I see a roadside motel, just 5 rooms and a buzzing neon sign, I wonder how many men like him are sitting outside, watching, waiting, hoping someone broken will mistake them for safe. Loneliness can make you vulnerable, but it shouldn't make you blind. Not everyone who sees your pain wants to help you heal. Some just want a place to put their own darkness. Be careful who you let into your silence.